Tonight on Cosmic Cantina, we talk about reincarnation, Akashic Records, and we each have our own past life reading and discover how our soul's true purpose has brought us all together. I'm your host, Melissa Tittle, and every week I go to my favorite bar, Cosmic Cantina, and kick back with my co-hosts, Josh Golembeski and Matt O'Connor. We talk about aliens, Bigfoot, ghosts, ancient cultures, and anything from the unseen world that needs a little illumination. All right, welcome to this week's Cosmic Cantina. And tonight we're drinking a nice bottle of Pinot Noir from Monterey. It's called Carmel Road. Ooh. It's very smooth.
It's so smooth.
Hey, I have been thinking about past lives. And I came across a couple news stories about kids that have, like this one kid, he was like 4 years old, started telling his mom that he wanted to go back to Hollywood and started reciting these old experiences with like Rita Hayworth. And and she brought him to a psychiatrist, and they couldn't actually figure out, there was nothing wrong with the kid. He just had these memories that he said were his, and he wanted to go home. And then I don't know, you and I were talking about this article in LA Times about this woman who was Marilyn Monroe. She thinks she's Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, what's her name? Her name was Sherry Lee Lard. I think I'm pronouncing it right.
That's her name.
Yeah.
And her story is really interesting because she just went in for a regression because she just had some weird affinity to things. And this psychiatrist was able to bring her back into this regression and find out all these stories. She was talking like Marilyn Monroe and all the affairs she had and how she died. They couldn't prove that she wasn't telling the truth, which brings up the bigger issue is it possible that this thing of past lives is real? There's just so many stories. These are two stories, but there's many people that document having weird experiences that they remember. They have fears of things that have never happened to them.
Before I go deep on the scientific evidence about reincarnation, a couple weird things about Sherry Lee Lard that kind of pointed to her being legitimately Marilyn Monroe in a different lifetime was she had profound similarities in her facial bone structure. You're going to look at the pictures. Her hands, her handwriting, her voice pattern, linguistics, and personality traits that exist between her and Marilyn Monroe. Now, that doesn't necessarily prove that reincarnation is real.
Right.
But there has been a lot of research in the field of reincarnation that, to me, is convincing enough. There's a guy, I went a little deep on this guy. His name was Dr. Ann Stevenson. He was a chair of the University of Virginia, and he was tasked with proving that the paranormal wasn't real. And he was tasked with trying to find out that it's all hogwash, and reincarnation in particular is all bullshit. Now, most reincarnation stories involve past life regressions, which is, a lot of people don't think that's just pseudoscience, or hypnosis, which also is highly controversial. But this study, He didn't use any of that. All he used was what kids said in a full conscious state about past lives. So this guy went from a skeptic to a staunch defender of reincarnation. And I thought
What's
that was
this guy's name?
His name was Dr. Ann Stevenson.
Wow.
His name is Ann?
I-A-N.
Oh, Ian?
Oh.
Okay.
I'm good.
It's a good thing Matt's here.
No, I thought you said Ann. I was like, you were saying he, though.
Yeah, okay. I'm bad at pronouncing
no worries,
words.
So Ann. Yeah, so there's another guy, his name's Jim Tucker. And he writes these amazing books of following children who have these stories about, like, they just tell these, like, crazy stories. Like that one, I'm pretty sure I remember that one in... where the kid remembers he used to live in Hollywood. And he remembers the exact house that he lived in.
Right.
And his mother was like, we've never even like looked at any of this stuff. And this
kid
he's
knew.
4. Yeah, he's
he
4
knew the
years old.
street name that this guy that he lived
right.
on.
Yeah. And I think he even talked about how he died and stuff. It was like,
the guy was. I remember the story.
Stuff.
The guy was he was a Broadway dancer. There was an extra in Hollywood that became a power agent, and the kid remembered all that.
Right.
And he even identified him in a picture. I've heard that story, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. His mother got him a whole bunch of books because he was so like obsessed with it. Got him a bunch of books about old Hollywood, and he was like pointing to pictures. And I think he found a picture of himself, maybe.
Yeah, he did. He's
Yeah.
pointing, that's me, mommy.
Right, yeah.
And they proved that guy was who he was talking about.
Yeah.
All the details led to that guy in the picture.
Yeah, it was like
Right.
proof. And
That's
it's like, how did a 4-year-old know any of that? Like,
No.
how would you even teach a 4-year-old
Right.
any of that?
Right.
It's crazy.
Well, just to be clear, 4-year-olds are good at lying. I have 2 children. They both were lying hardcore
Yes,
by
they are.
3.5.
Yeah.
So they're,
Yeah, but he had specific details, like affairs
Right.
with certain actresses that were real.
right.
He even remembered being to New York. You know, like he's like, oh, it's a street started with a rock.
right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of that is hard to fake. There's also a pretty famous guy who's on Oprah, Dr. Brian Weiss.
Oh, yeah, I've
and
heard
he's
of
a
him.
graduate of Yale Medical School. And he has spent 26 years conducting past life regression therapy on some 4,000 patients. And you can look this guy up. He's got lots of research. But one thing that was really interesting that he said, it's not just Hindus and Buddhists. There's Jewish tradition, Kabbalah, mystical Christianity. Plato believed in it. Ancient Greeks did. Many Romans and Benjamin Franklin. Like
Franklin.
the idea that like
Well,
we're the only.
Benny Franklin believes in it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm on board.
You're on board.
Let's do it.
I mean, it's like a human thing.
Yeah.
We believe that we lived before.
Yeah.
So maybe there's some truth to it.
Yeah. It feels right to me. I just believe in it. Maybe I want to believe in it to make my life seem more important, you know? But I think
Yeah.
it's fascinating. And I think,
I mean, in the Eastern cultures, the Asian, Indian, those kind of cultures. I mean, it's just like for a lot of people over there, it's just kind of a given. That's
Yeah.
what happens.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
not like a foreign concept that's like considered woo or whatever. It's an actual
yeah.
It's part of life.
part of their deal, part of their culture. So
An interesting caveat about Dr. Brian Weiss was his daughter Amy did not believe in it, and she eventually regressed, and she had cataracts, like bad cataracts, and finally he was able to, through past life regression or hypnosis, get her to unlock a past life where she was like an old man in medieval times that was accused of being a wizard. So they burnt down his house, and his eyes burned,
wow,
and then her
Ooh.
cataracts after that
Wow.
incident
I just got the shivers.
just disappeared. So her cataracts went away after that.
What?
Yeah.
His
And then-
daughter?
Yeah. So a lot of past lives connect to like a modern like physical
Ailment.
problem. So like yeah, like
yeah,
there's
right.
a
I've heard
story
that,
of
like birthmarks and all that sort of stuff. that
Yeah, exactly.
Line up with yeah.
So the audience doesn't know this, but we had this conversation before we got on our microphones. And so a couple days ago, we decided to get a little past life regression ourselves.
Yes, we did.
Except this person specifically deals in where you originated in the universe, meaning the first past life you've ever had, like how you came into being into a physical body. And of course, that sounds even more woo-woo than these people talking about their research, which is pretty modern. But we thought we'd give it a try.
We
And-
did indeed.
We all have really crazy stories. And the other thing is, we did not talk to each other at all about what we found out about ourselves and how we know each other. So this should be kind of interesting because we're going to reveal like what we found out about each other and then of course ourselves.
Right, that's cool. We found out that we all had connections or even directly had interactions in sort of past like eons ago when we were beings from different galaxies. We'll get into it, but
It's way out there.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's
worth
we
it.
all kind of we knew each other on some level way back in the day, but it's like much older. There's like billions of
Millions of
millions
years.
millions and billions.
Just to be clear, she never told me about either of you two.
Well, who's she? You want to set up who she is?
So who she is. So if you actually want this, if you want to get a regression yourself, her name is Debbie Solaris. Let me read her bio. So Debbie Solaris is an ET contactee, interdimensional traveler, and galactic historian. After a fateful extraterrestrial contact experience a few years ago, Debbie awakened to her true star lineage and higher calling. Through her ancestral connection with the Akashic Records, she has been receiving downloads of galactic historical information and universal spiritual knowledge ever since. She feels that it's a big part of her mission while she's here on Earth to help awaken others to their own true divine selves and cosmic origins.
Oh wow! So I had no idea that she had her own contact experience.
Yeah, she was actually in. This is not in her bio, but this is what she told me. She was actually in the military.
Oh, wow.
She
I didn't know
was
that.
not into aliens at all.
Yeah.
Her significant other was her husband. She's kind of like, okay, it's interesting. And then she had this crazy experience that happened to her, and it opened up a channel of sorts where she could actually see people's auras and be able to connect with their origin.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think to ask her about any of that sort of stuff, but it was all about me anyway. So
Yeah, well, that's usually you, Matt.
all about me.
All right, so I think we should just get into it. Who wants to go first?
Sure. Well, why don't you give us a brief rundown on what she does? I mean, she told me that she kind of sees everything through her third eye, and she said it's like kind of a movie playing that she kind of narrates and says what's going on.
Images and feelings. She receives images and feelings, not necessarily.
Right. And she receives them directly from her guides, my guides, and I guess there's guides who kind of run the Akashic record store. It's not a store. It's
The Akashic Records. We should break that down quickly.
Yeah, let's talk about
the
Akashic
Akashic Records.
Yeah, tell me about that.
So there's a lot of opinions on what the Akashic Records are, and I know you guys have definitions of it, but I want to give... There was one person who gave me the definition of Akashic Records, and I felt like it made sense to me, and that was Matthias De Stefano. We interviewed him a couple months ago, and he's one of these. He's able to remember all of his past lives, and he explained the Akashic Records as kind of a circuit board, electrons, protons, like this massive amount of energy circuit board, and people that are able to tap into it find that one piece of the circuit that has your signature on it, and they read all the energy signatures. So there's no old man with a beard walking around with a bunch of books, and he's like, "Oh, Melissa Tittle, here she is. Okay, first picture." Like, I don't think. That's the romantic version of like pictures and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely think a library in my head.
Is it St. Peter who supposedly waits at the pearly gates and
Yes.
reads
Yes.
you your past
Yeah.
discrepancies?
I definitely don't. I would prefer the electrons and protons situation.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds a little bit more modern. Yeah.
But that made sense because like you said, she kind of is able to see pictures in your own signatures that are in your field or in your existence, in your genetic makeup by energy, like an energy signature. That makes more sense to these other people's idea of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, yeah.
I think it just seems like, from what I read about the Akashic Records, it goes way back to like the Druids, and there's like accounts of a similar. It's not called Akashic Records in any of these old societies, but there's, I think there's even Bible verses and stuff that talk about
Really?
lives where you're. Yeah,
Wow.
It's not so much like your past lives. It doesn't talk specifically about reincarnation, but talking about like your life being recorded in some sort of, I don't know. It's recorded. People are watching. So
That's pretty cool, though.
So
I didn't know
hands
that
off.
actually. That
keep your hands off yourself.
so there's all these ancient
'Cause-
cultures that say there is some kind of recording.
Yeah. So
a life review is very common in a lot of
A
cultures.
life review. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so cool.
Didn't you once say that too many people are trying to access it currently?
Yes. Okay, so
That's
the same
interesting.
guy, Matthias, who's ever listening, check this guy out. He's so fascinating. What I love about him is that he has no ego. So there's no...
And he is just adorable too.
He is. He is
Sorry,
very
carry on.
adorable. He's pretty cute. I have to say.
Yeah, he makes everyone bi-curious. He's amazing.
Men want him. Women want to be him. That's not how it goes. Anyway, carry on.
He stated that too many people are actually. I think the people are moving into a higher consciousness, and they're being able to access the Akashic Records by themselves. But too many people accessing the Akashic Records, even your own. Having too many people access your own Akashic Records, you're actually screwing up your Akashic Records. So if you know too much about the past and the future, you can actually change the events.
Yeah, look, if you're out there and you're thinking about accessing your Akashic Records, please put things back in an orderly fashion.
Close them properly.
Put
St.
it back.
Petersburg is
Yeah.
pissed.
Things.
that his name?
St. Petersburg.
St. Peter.
The Russian
Peter.
and the